Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and this is Voice of the Global South. All right then, let's get started. On the show this week, the US pauses new student visa interviews because the Trump government plans to expand its vetting of applicants' social media profiles. Is Somaliland on the brink of becoming the newest country in the world? We analyze the prospects of statehood for Somaliland. And a special feature on the Hinglaj Temple in Balochistan, which is a revered shrine for Hindus worldwide. The US government has paused new student visa appointments as it ramps up social media vetting. The US has justified its crackdown by pointing to everything from theft of technology by China and students' involvement in activism critical of Israel's offensive in Gaza to minor traffic violations and other infractions.
And I get to know that I will not get a visa, and this is just shattering for me. You know, all my dreams, all my aspirations are shattered now, and I'm really confused, scared, and I don't know what to plan here.
He's 28 years old, an Indian citizen who wants to remain anonymous.
Just overnight, you change a policy, you change a rule. This is just not acceptable.
A dream built on hope, stopped by the stroke of a pen. And he's only one of 10,000s of students left in the lurch.
This is a temporary phase, what we feel, and I've been speaking with US embassies and officials at universities and other partner universities, etc. And I feel this is a very temporary situation.
A sweeping policy shift by Trump government has sent ripples through campuses and across oceans. The US has hit the brakes on scheduling new student visa interviews, citing new vetting procedures and national security concerns.
It is intriguing that US government is suspending them because it will not be good, because the chances of better lifestyle and better colleges and better upholding will get less for Indian students.
The change is with immediate effect. It will extend all FM and J categories of US visas that are used for academic, vocational and exchange programs. No new slots are available, although previously booked visa interviews will not be affected. The directive came via a 26-May diplomatic cable sent by United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio, instructing US embassies and consulates around the world to suspend new student and exchange visitor appointments until further notice. Why? Because the US is preparing for expanded social media screening and vetting procedures. So what exactly are consular officials going to be looking for? Here's what we know. Under the new rules, foreign students will be asked to provide information about their digital lives going back to 2019. This includes activities on platforms such as X, formerly known Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and others. And it's not just selfies and hashtags which are under scrutiny. Students will be screened for their activity on social media. From their Instagram posts to their protest history, everything will be scrutinized. What do they write on social media? Did they take part in protests or demonstrations? Are there police records against them? Everything will be pulled from their digital history. A broad review of online behavior and affiliations is now part of the visa process. According to a State Department spokesperson, Tammy Bruce, whether you're a student or a tourist who needs a visa, or whoever you are, we're going to be looking at you.
So right now, there might be some delay, and what I'm told to encourage people to do is to regularly check to see when those spaces open. So as opposed to let me just say, I would not be recommending that if this was going to be weeks or months.
Wait, there's more. The US Embassy in India has cautioned students that if you drop out, skip classes, or leave your program of study without informing your school, your student visa may be revoked and you may lose eligibility for further US visas. The embassy went on to say always adhere to the terms of your visa and maintain your student status to avoid any issues. Meanwhile, India said that it expects the US to consider visa applications of Indian students based on merit.
We have seen reports suggesting US government's updated guidance regarding student and exchange visitor visa applicants. The welfare of Indian students abroad remains of utmost priority to the Government of India. We will continue to follow further developments in this regard. While we note that issuance of visa is a sovereign function, we hope that the application of Indian students will be considered on merit and they will be able to join their academic programs on time.
So what's driving this change? And how will it affect international students studying in the United States? Students' protests in the United States all over the war in Gaza have intensified and expanded, with the number of encampments now in place at colleges such as Columbia, Yale, and New York University. Police have been called into several campuses to arrest demonstrators. Trump has called these protesters anti-Semitic. In August 2023, 21 Indian students were deported in a single day because of visa-related complications. Ranjani Srinivasan, a 37-year-old Indian student pursuing a doctoral degree in urban planning at Columbia University, self-deported herself days after her student visa was revoked for participating in pro-Palestine protests. The US government cancelled her visa on 5th March, citing security concerns related to her alleged involvement in activities supportive of the Hamas. In 2023-24 academic year, more than 1.1 million foreign students enrolled in US institutions. Indian students led the numbers, followed by China. They make up 54% of the total international enrollments in the US higher education population, roughly 19 million students overall. International students comprise of up to 6% of the total US higher education enrollment. They contributed an estimated $43.8 billion to the United States economy and supported more than 378,000 jobs in 2023 and 24. The US has more than 1,500 universities and colleges that admit international students. These institutions range from public universities to private colleges, offering a wide variety of programs for students from around the world. Recently, the US State Department imposed visa restrictions on certain Indian travel agencies found facilitating illegal immigration to the US. The new US student visa policy announcement coincided with India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri's visit to Washington, D.C. for a meeting with his US counterpart, Christopher Landau. They reaffirmed the close partnership between the United States and India. Misri underscored the importance of fair and reciprocal market access to fostering economic growth and prosperity. The US official emphasized the importance of enhanced cooperation on migration and counter-narcotics. More recently, in May 2025, the Trump government's action against Harvard University put the future of 6,800 international students at risk, with 800 Indian students potentially facing deportation if they cannot transfer to another student and exchange visitor program certified university. The Trump government stopped Harvard from enrolling international students under the Student and Exchange Visitor Program because of alleged non-compliance and demands around diversity, equity, and its handling of pro-Palestine protests. Trump has even threatened to redirect $3 billion in government grants from Harvard to trade schools. The US has come down particularly hard on Chinese students. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has vowed to aggressively revoke visas of Chinese students. At the heart of the crackdown is a deep suspicion in Washington, D.C. that Beijing uses academic exchanges to steal US technology and research. recent decades have seen a steady flow of Chinese students into the United States campuses, especially in STEM education, a pipeline of talent and expertise that's been a boon to US universities and its industry. For the Trump government, that flow now looks like a national security vulnerability. But this is not limited to education itself. It's more about students turning into spies accused of espionage, to which multiple Chinese students have been accused in the past decade. Announcing the new crackdown on Chinese students, Rubio said that the United States would target students, including those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party or studying in critical fields. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce has made it very clear that the United States will not tolerate exploitation of US universities by the Chinese Communist Party or theft of US research and intellectual property.
The United States, I further can say here, will not tolerate the CCP's exploitation of U.S. universities or theft of U.S. research, intellectual property, or technologies to grow its military power, conduct intelligence collection, or repress voices of opposition. The Trump administration is focused on protecting our nation and our citizens by upholding our national security and public safety through our visa process, obviously very openly and transparently applied by Secretary Marco Rubio.
Even though the United States remains the top destination for students, many are now exploring alternative options in Europe and Australia. Australia's established infrastructure would likely attract international students after the US pause.
Our department and other universities in Australia will try to take advantage of this year, given that American universities might not be hiring or not hiring at the same scale as they usually do. We can get the best of the best here in the country.
The European Union and France have announced a slew of incentives to lure scientists to the continent, seeking to profit from US funding cuts and clashes with top US universities. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has earmarked $566 million for this purpose. France's President Emmanuel Macron has announced an additional $113 million to attract researchers to France.
Science is an investment, and we need to offer the right incentives. This is why I can announce that we will put forward a new €500 million package for 2025 to 2027 to make Europe a magnet for researchers. This will help support the best and the brightest researchers and scientists from Europe and around the world.
With the new college semester set to begin in September, time is of the essence. Whether you're a fresher or a doctoral candidate, it's no longer just about your GPA. It's also about your digital past, because when it comes to US visas in 2025, everything counts, including what you did 6 years ago. Bureau Report, DD India.
Somaliland, a self-governed state in the Horn of Africa, is grabbing headlines for its newfound geostrategic importance and its quest for independence. What's driving the spotlight on this land of 6 million people? And how does the US-China rivalry factor in? We take a deep dive into its history, geography, and geopolitics. Tensions are running high between Somaliland and Somalia as the US and China take their battle to the Horn of Africa. US President Donald Trump is said to be considering recognizing Somaliland as an independent country in return for gaining access to a military base there in order to counter China's influence and monitor regional threats such as the Houthis in Yemen. Some US lawmakers, such as Scott Perry, who belong to Trump's Republican Party, are pushing for statehood to Somaliland. Perry has introduced a bill proposing formal US recognition for Somaliland. Project 2025 makes a similar pitch. Project 2025 is a name given to a document called Mandate for Leadership with a Conservative Promise. Under a paragraph titled Counter Malign Chinese Activity on the Continent, it calls for the recognition of Somaliland's statehood as a hedge against the US's deteriorating position in Djibouti. The 900-odd page document has been compiled by the Right Thing Heritage Foundation and more than 100 other conservative organizations. It offers a roadmap of sorts for the second Trump presidency. You could call it a policy wish list or a set of proposals that would impose an ultra-conservative social vision on the US government. Now, before I proceed any further, let me give you a brief history of Somaliland and why it matters. Somaliland sits on the northern coast of Somalia, covering 176,000 square kilometers along the Gulf of Aden. In terms of area, it is around the same size as the state of Andhra Pradesh in India, or slightly smaller than the West Asian country of Syria. Bordered by Ethiopia, Djibouti and Somalia's Puntland region, its 850-kilometer coastline is a gateway to vital Red Sea shipping lanes. Somaliland's strategic location makes it a focal point in regional geopolitics. With a population composed mostly of ethnic Somalis, its terrain spans coastal plains and rugged mountains. A former British protectorate, Somaliland gained independence in June 1960, briefly uniting with Italian Somaliland to form the country of Somalia. By 1991, after a devastating civil war collapsed Somalia's government, Somaliland reasserted its independence. It became a de facto state with its own currency, passport and regular elections. But Somalia considers Somaliland as a breakaway region and rejects its claim for independence. Despite Somaliland's de facto statehood, Somalia's government in Mogadishu asserts full territorial control over it. Now, the Horn of Africa is a veritable geopolitical chessboard. Somaliland is located at the intersection of many converging and oftentimes competing interests, economic, military and strategic, of many countries in the region and beyond. Now, the scramble for foreign bases along the Horn of Africa's coast is of particular concern to the US, which established its first and largest military facility on the African continent in Djibouti in the year 2002. China opened a military base in Djibouti in 2017. It is China's first overseas military base. Now, the US is eyeing another base, this time in the neighboring Somaliland, the Red Sea port of Berbera. Now, Berbera has a 4,000-kilometer runway built by the erstwhile Soviet Union during the Cold War. It has one of the longest landing strips in Africa. The airfield was once rented by the US Space Agency for space shuttles. It was recently inaugurated and renovated by the United Arab Emirates, but remains vacant. For its part, Somaliland is pitching Berbera as an attractive proposition for the US and as an alternative to a congested Djibouti, where the US base sits next to that of the Chinese and some European nations. An article published by the New York Times is headlined, "African Breakaway State Offers US a Chance to Stick It to China." It says that as the trade war with China heats up, a new US foothold on the African continent could help counter Chinese influence. Somaliland is one of the few places in Africa that has maintained close diplomatic ties with Taiwan and has positioned itself as an indispensable US ally willing to stand up to China. Somaliland's ties with Taiwan and Berbera's potential as US base escalate this rivalry. Recently, Somalia banned Taiwan nationals from entering it. Somaliland's President Abdirahman Mohamed Abdullahi wrote a letter to Trump in January this year in which he said, "Many countries, when forced to choose between the US and China, opt for the latter. We have consistently chosen and will continue to choose America, Taiwan, and other free democratic partners. Tensions escalated when Taiwan opened its representative office in Somaliland's capital, Hargeisa, in 2020. Since then, Taiwan has spent millions of dollars on military training, agriculture, medicine, and infrastructure in Somaliland. But there's a catch. Recognizing Somaliland could shift U.S. strategy in the Horn of Africa. For one, it risks alienating Somalia, and two, it would upset the U.S.'s allies such as Egypt and Turkey, who fear that the move would set a precedent for secessionist movements across the region. Already, relations between Somaliland and Somalia have been set back. Somaliland suspended all peace talks with Somalia following a controversial visit by Somalia's Prime Minister to the disputed Sul region. Somaliland called it a violation of its sovereignty. Tensions further escalated when Somalia's president, not to be outdone by Somaliland, wrote his own letter to Trump offering the U.S. exclusive control of 2 air bases and 2 ports, including the port of Berbera. Somaliland retorted that Somalia did not have the authority to provide the U.S. with an asset it did not control. And Ethiopia waded into the conflict when it entered into a deal with Somaliland that gave it access to the Red Sea. In return, Somaliland claimed that Ethiopia would recognize it as an independent state. Although Ethiopia has not publicly committed itself to recognizing Somaliland's statehood, the agreement set off a major diplomatic and military standoff between Ethiopia and Somalia. It raised concerns about a wider conflict, one that would pull in Ethiopia's longtime adversaries Eritrea and Egypt. But Somalia and Ethiopia have since agreed to end their dispute with a little help from Turkey. What complicates matters is Somalia's own checkered history with the U.S. Memories of a 1993 incident are fresh in the minds of some when the bodies of 18 U.S. soldiers were dragged through the streets of Mogadishu after Somali fighters shot down U.S. helicopters. As for Trump, he withdrew most American troops from Somalia during his first term in office. The soldiers had been deployed there to fight against Al-Shabaab, a terror group affiliated to Al-Qaeda. Today, the U.S. retains only a few hundred troops in Somalia. According to reports, some U.S. officials close to Trump, who is now into his second term in office, are in favor of closing the U.S. embassy in Mogadishu. So, in conclusion, after 34 years of its de facto independence, no country has formally recognized Somaliland. The Trump government's interest in statehood for Somaliland is clear, but it has not committed to it just yet. But Somaliland's President Abdullahi remains hopeful. In an interview to the Guardian newspaper published in the UK, he says recognition is on the horizon. President Abdullahi says it's a matter of time, not if, but when, and who will lead the recognition of Somaliland. Some reports suggest that Trump's nascent proposal of resettling Palestinians from Gaza to Somaliland could spur the U.S. to recognize the territory as a separate country. As Somaliland navigates regional rivalries and seeks global recognition, its future hangs in the balance. Will the U.S. take the historic step of recognizing Somaliland as a separate country? Will Somaliland finally become an independent nation, the 194th member of the United Nations? Watch this space. Now, nestled in the rugged terrains of Balochistan, the Hinglaj Temple is one of the holiest shrines of Hindus. It's a Shakti Peeth, a seat of divine female power. Raghini Sudhir Chaure gets you more.
In the rocky folds of Pakistan-occupied Balochistan, nestled within the Hingol National Park, stands a shrine older than memory, the Hinglaj Mata Temple. Sacred to Hindus for over 2 millennia, this cave temple is one of the 51 Shakti Peeths or seats of power where parts of goddess Sati's body are believed to have fallen after her self-immolation. Hindus believe that it was here, in this rugged wilderness, that goddess Sati's head fell. The temple, carved into the hills, draws hundreds of thousands each year in what is called the Hinglaj Yatra, the largest Hindu pilgrimage of its kind in Pakistan-occupied Balochistan. In 2025, the festival attracted a record 200,000 pilgrims, a testament to the spiritual pull of the site despite harsh conditions and regional instability. The pilgrimage is not just a religious act, it is a symbol of cultural survival. For Pakistan's 4.4 million Hindus, who make up less than 2% of the population, often facing systemic discrimination in jobs, housing and welfare, Hinglaj is a refuge of divine justice. The journey begins at a sacred mud volcano where devotees toss coconuts and rose petals into a bubbling crater, seeking divine permission to proceed. Pilgrims bathe in the Hingle River, a ritual akin to bathing in the Ganga that flows through India. Reaching the temple is not easy. It involves trekking through barren terrain, over 7 steep hills, often in blistering heat, some walking by night, guided only by mobile phone lights. For much of the 20th century, the temple could not be accessed by many Pakistani Hindus. It wasn't until the 1990s that Hindu groups began to institutionalize the site and revive its significance. In India's Gujarat and Rajasthan states bordering Pakistan, the longing to visit the Hinglaj Mata Temple runs deep. But Pakistani visas remain difficult to obtain, and for many, the spiritual dream remains just that. In a surprising turn, the authorities in Pakistan-occupied Balochistan recently announced a plan to renovate and promote the temple as a religious tourism site. Improved accessible roads, safety protocols and a master plan to protect the area's ecology and culture are now in motion. But a larger question hangs in the air, one that blends geopolitics with faith. If Pakistan-occupied Balochistan were to become free, would pilgrims from India find easier access to undertake the pilgrimage to the Hinglaj Mata Temple? Until then, the cave of Hinglaj stands a silent witness to millennia of faith, devotion and hope. Ragini Sudhi Chore for DD India.
And with that, it's a wrap. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.